The horse changed everything. From the moment humans mounted these powerful creatures, we shaped the world with horsepower. But how did our bond begin? Who were the first humans to ride on horseback? My name is Niobe Thompson. I'm an anthropologist, and I'm dying to know how my ancestors first realized a wild horse could become a companion. Come with me on a journey back to the time of the first riders and discover just how much we owe these mysterious cultures. How did a human first get up on a horse? I'm fascinated by this question. Clues are emerging. Archaeological discoveries. Traces of the past surviving in the present. And now, using ancient DNA, geneticists are cracking the code of the first riders.
Our understanding of human prehistory is moving with a speed that I don't think it has ever moved with in the past. It's amazing times to live in.
To understand how humans and horses launched their brilliant career, I'm starting my search here, Mongolia. The last place on Earth where nomads still rely on horses to survive. Mongolia's Altai Mountains are so remote and so harsh, they protected a unique culture, Kazakh nomads. Even today, they subsist in isolation, migrating through these pastures with their livestock. What I'm fascinated to see is how it's even possible to survive in such a punishing environment. And I'm pretty sure it has everything to do with the horse. Summer in the high Altai. These Kazakh nomads have found a place to live as their ancestors did, migrating on horseback 4 times a year. Traditions are strong here, and luckily for me, it's a rule that the door is always open to a stranger. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, жақсыз.
Min atum Niobe.
Менің атым Ауыз.
Always.
Ауыз.
Always.
Ауыз.
My hosts, Awaz and Khimis, invite me into their home. Surrounded by so many animals, I expected them to set the table with meat, but almost all the food is made from milk. I'm even more surprised to learn it's made from horse milk, and it's delicious. So this is really a summer lunch, because so many of the things on the table you only have in the summertime. So this is white cheese, this is red cheese, this is the whey from the milk that's been dried in the sun. So much of it is what comes in the summer season. I feel like this is the time to fatten up, not just for the animals, but for us too.
Армысың құрбы құрдас жолдастарым, өзімнің бір ойнаған құрдастарым, осындай достарымның тойларындай осылай өзімшіл бір ән бастадым.
Nine-year-old Janibek is the only boy in the family. It's just him and his father to mind the animals. And it seems to me they're always in the saddle. For just a short time, I want to help where I can, but I have a feeling I'm just getting in the way. Milking a horse is all about tricking the horse. So what happens is someone brings a foal in, the foal sucks the milk from the teats, the milk falls, and then they pull the foal away quickly, and someone rushes in and milks the horse. As soon as the mare knows that it's not the foal or suspects something's different, the milk dries up. The mare sensed that I didn't really know what I was doing, and as soon as I got a bit of milk out, the teats dried up. They had to bring the foal back in. It's really hard. Just a little bit. Oh well, it's some. The stamina of Altai horses is legendary. They can gallop 50 kilometers without stopping. And there's nothing Kazakh boys would rather do. The short summer is critical for laying up food, but from time to time, everyone in the valley puts their tools down and celebrates. As with everything they do, it's a celebration with horses.
Of all the horse games, this is the one I like best. It's called the boy kissing girl game, and as far as I can tell, it involves a woman galloping off and a man galloping after her and trying to steal a kiss. And she has a horsewhip to defend herself. So I can't resist, I gotta try this, but apparently they've given me the best horsewoman in the valley. So I think I'm gonna need a helmet.
But all these contests are just a warm-up for this, the ultimate horse game, a race. In Kazakh culture, the only contestants are boys. This is Janibek's moment. The course runs the entire length of the valley. 10 kilometers of rough ground. And the boys are racing bareback. With his win, Janibek's caught everyone's attention and done his family proud.
This is wonderful. Families coming together to visit and feast and play horse games. You know, the life of a horse nomad seems timeless, but actually, this is fascinating. Horse herding is actually quite a recent invention. I mean, we were herding sheep and goats and cows for thousands of years before we got on a horse. But once we did, the equation changed completely. In fact, the equation changed by a factor of 4.
On a horse, humans can manage 4 times more animals than a herder on foot. Scientists believe when humans first began herding on horseback, that leap in productivity signaled the beginning of the family.
So, before we tamed horses, we lived as clans. After, we lived as families.
Sok kaynatып ала бермейін. Қойшы сен.
Today we take family life for granted, just as we do riding a horse. But these were both discoveries, turning points in the human journey. So, how did we make that discovery? As deep as human history stretches, the Great Grass Sea of Central Asia has been home to horse cultures. And even earlier, this steppe was covered in wild horses. So this is where we've searched for the earliest domestication of the horse. But exactly where and when this happened is very hard to tell. It's a big place, and horse nomads don't leave much behind. And then, of course, whatever archaeologists were finding was locked behind the Iron Curtain. But now, a team of scientists may finally have discovered the ancient home of the first humans to tame horses. It's in Kazakhstan, a place called Botai. English archaeologists Catriona Mackenzie and Alan Outram lead the dig, and I'm here to witness the results. 40 years ago, archaeologist Victor Zybert built a tower at Botai. When he climbed to the top, he noticed something in the grass below. Circles. These were ancient houses, almost 6,000 years old, when we thought the only people here were nomads. Even more surprising to Victor were the millions of horse bones at the site. These ancient hunters were hunting horses.
Палеозоологи посчитали, что определимые кости примерно 356 тысяч лошадей были съедены.
За сколько времени?
Эта культура была в пределах 800 лет, ориентировочно.
I'm astonished. These bones are proof. The Botai people ate almost nothing else. That kind of specialization attracted the attention of American archaeologist Sandra Olson.
I knew there was promise there because when I saw that huge village and saw 300,000 horse bones and that focus, very few bones from other animals, I said, this has to be a place where they had domestic horses. And they were really focused on eating horse meat. But that wasn't proof in its own right. There wasn't enough for my colleagues.
They might have eaten horses, but we know almost nothing about the Botai people themselves. That is about to change. While we film, Catriona and Alan find something that gets everyone's attention.
A big chunk of it.
Looking more likely?
It's a sliver of bone, part of a human skull.
I mean, we had no idea what we were going to see, and we're very excited that, yes, these definitely were human, and when we eventually started to dig it, we realized that the whole thing was going to turn into probably a whole skeleton, and that was very exciting that we were going to get a whole individual out. I mean, I can't stress how rare human remains are at this site.
If this turns out to be a skeleton from the Botai culture, we might finally learn who these people were and how they're linked to us. But for Alan and Catriona, lifting the skeleton presents a serious challenge. And they'll need to recover something else: DNA. That is where this scientist fits in.
Danish geneticist Eske Willerslev is world famous for finding and sequencing the genes of ancient humans. It takes a big discovery to entice Eske out of his lab, but he's here.
We'll have to let the archaeologists work, right? Unfortunately, I would rather do that work myself, but in order to avoid contamination, but they have to do the job, and then I hope that we will be able to take over as soon as the human remains are uncovered. Hey, is it okay to walk here?
Eske has just 1 day at Botai. All he needs is a fragment of bone, but it won't come quickly. With a find this precious, the archaeologist can't rush. And Eske isn't a patient man.
But you have no idea how much of the skeleton is there, huh?
We don't yet, so we're working down in this area to see, because obviously from the anatomical alignment it should go in this direction if it's still articulated correctly. So we're coming down carefully in this area to see if it.
But there's also bones here, right? Small bone fragments, or?
Yes, there are quite a lot of bone fragments all around. Some of them are horse bones.
Yeah.
So
super exciting. So you have no idea how long it will take you to uncover that skull, huh?
No, well, we'll see.
Yeah. I'm all excited to get.
And whether there's only one or whether there's
6,000 years ago, humans were like specks of sand on this vast steppe. And those few were nomads, hunter-gatherers on foot, always moving. But at Botai, something changed. These nomads stopped. They built a village. This was a revolution.
How did the horse change the Batai people? The people before that were pedestrian hunter-gatherers. They moved around the terrain all the time. They hunted all kinds of animals, whatever was available. So this is a big change. You're monocropping on horses. You're settling in big, permanent settlements.
Monocropping the horse. Nomads settling in one place. A way of life had changed completely. The Botai must now have controlled the animal they once chased. But how do we know this? It turns out the proof was there, just not visible to the naked eye.
And then, of course, Alan Outram, who was on our team, decided to look for mare's milk residues. And that was very exciting. People decided that was the smoking gun, because you don't milk a wild mare.
Alan gathered bits of broken pottery and tested them for the biological fingerprint of milk, horse milk.
When we got the evidence that there was milking of horses at Batai, I was actually very surprised, because it is an absolute clincher of domestication. I don't think anyone can seriously argue that you haven't got decent control of animals if they're being milked. You really can't milk a wild horse.
Finally, we had direct evidence that humans were somehow controlling horses. But the question is, how? Were the Botai simply herding wild horses into corrals? Or did they go further?
I think we have the evidence that at Batai they are certainly, we know they're eating them. These horses are butchered. But we do think that they are riding them too. It's incredibly difficult for people to control horses without some means of mobility. So you almost need to be riding horses to herd horses.
Their prey was now becoming their companion. As the Bowtie seduced the wild horse, did they understand the power they had harnessed? Riding this magical creature must have felt like breaking a law of nature. Their world would never be the same.
It's like a massive freedom. It's an amazing, it's like, you know, inventing the car. It was just out there, the car was just out there. It's a matter of catching it, right? I mean, you're getting on this horse and you can just travel wherever you want for almost as long as you want, right? Cover enormous amount of ground. It's a game changer, right? It's a game changer in human history.
As the heat climbs, the archaeologists are still scratching away. Slowly, an entire human skeleton is emerging. Intact, but incredibly fragile.
The skull in particular, whilst it was pretty much all there, was crushed. So only really held together by the soil. There were lots of breaks already pre-existing.
When you have cleared the head, can we kind of remove the lower jaw to get a tooth?
I think the lower jaw will come away.
Up by itself, huh?
Yeah.
The skeleton is so ancient, Eska's worried the DNA may have decayed. The best chance of finding what's left is in the petrous bone, buried deep behind the ear. Everyone knows getting the petrous could destroy the skull.
Do you think there's a petrous bone down there?
I haven't got to that side yet.
Okay.
I'll let you know as soon as I do.
Okay. I'm sure.
Well, it's going to be right directly on the opposite side of this. So clearly I can't see through. Okay. Ready?
Wow.
Archaeology is not a repeatable experiment. You've got evidence that you are destroying. That's why we have to hold our line on doing things carefully. We can never excavate that again.
It's an interesting dynamic to see. There's a little bit of joking and there's a little bit of tension.
Yeah. And also you can see the discussion already kind of started of what we can sample, right? But I'm not leaving this site without both petrous and 2 teeth. I mean, we're going to get that. Wow. There's both. Oh, hey, there's a petrous there, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
The archaeologists are finally ready for the geneticist to step in. If he can find DNA in these samples, the results could reveal the identity of the first humans to tame the horse.
Wow. Okay, this is beautiful.
This is beautiful.
This is beautiful.
No, this is fantastic. Yeah. Amazing, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. It was very good.
I'll send you a bill.
Yeah. Exactly. It must be huge considering the hours. I'm really optimistic, and it was definitely worth the waiting. Although it was very painful. But you know, I really think we have a really good chance of getting it. So I got everything I wanted.
The friendship these first riders discovered in their horses must have been magical. But the gift they were giving to countless generations to come, they couldn't have known. As I prepared to depart, it turned out Bowtie had one more secret to reveal. A frightening message from the past. When Alan and Catriona lifted the skeleton, they noticed something strange.
There didn't appear to be any great care taken over the burial of this individual. The position of the actual body itself was fairly haphazard.
And then, they found something inside the skeleton's chest.
I pulled the item out, and it turned out to be quite a substantial-sized stone point. It's probably off a javelin. So now we've got to think, why was it there? I mean, it was in a place that you would every bit expect to relate to trauma. So it could be that this was a victim of violence.
We can only guess what happened here 6,000 years ago. The invention of riding was one of the most important milestones in the human story. Taming horses was such a huge leap forward. The first riders must have left a mark, still evident today. Some kind of signal in our DNA.
But when the geneticists returned from Botai to their laboratories, they found some very strange things, some very puzzling results. These were the first humans ever to domesticate horses, the first humans to harness horsepower, and yet, after them, silence, nothing. The people at Botai fumbled the ball.
Botai should have been the masters of the world, right? They domesticated the horse, probably one of the most influential events in human history. These guys, hunter-gatherers, at some point jumping up on the game, start riding it and milking it, doing everything right, and still they kind of screws it. I mean, they become a dead end, right? They don't have an impact.
Eska's DNA testing tells us the Botai culture simply came to an end.
This is a beautiful story about a people, very simple, very ancient people, doing something that could change human history, right? I guess you can call it tragic irony. They do something amazing, but without really impacting the world as they were supposed to do.
But the fate of the Botai people is not the only broken thread. Another of the scientists at the excavation was French horse geneticist Ludovic Orlando. And what he discovered is almost too bizarre to believe.
So the results of our analysis were a total, complete surprise to us. There is no doubt that the first domestic horse was domesticated in Kazakhstan at Botai, so that part of the story remains still very important. And I was expecting that population to have been the source of all and every possible domestic horse that lives on the planet today. And I have no way to express how wrong I've been, actually. What we found by sequencing the genome of those horses is that indeed they were the first domestic horses, but there has been a second domestication center somewhere else that was the source that created the diversity of all domesticated horses that live today. And the most surprising thing was that the population of horses that was domesticated at Botai, they left a descending lineage, living still today. The big surprise is that it's not a domestic horse. It's a Przewalski horse, which is the only wild horse that we have on the planet.
The Przewalski, a wild horse, a different species, found today only in Mongolia. We thought they couldn't be tamed. It turns out they were the first horse humans ever rode. The Botai culture shone bright, then disappeared. without a trace. Their horses returned to the wild. Still, the world would never be the same. Their discovery was destined to transform the steppes. Just as the first riders disappeared, a powerful new culture took their place. We call them the Yamnaya. These nomads had grasped the lesson of horsepower from the Botai, but they tamed a different horse, Equus cabilis, the same species as all modern horses. The nomadic Yamnaya never settled. They were the first of the great horse nations to rule the vast Asian steppe. But we're now learning, on horseback, they went much further. Their arrival brought an ancient world to an end and gave birth to another.
Around 5,000 years ago, we see a major genetic shift. We have a new genetic component coming into Europe, which wasn't present there before.
Yamnaya is a culture and a group of people that really severely have impacted both Asians, but especially Europeans of today.
What geneticists like Eske and Johannes have discovered are the genes of the Yamnaya scattered across a huge territory, from China to India, to the Middle East, and even to the northern edge of Europe.
They start migrating around 5,000 years ago, and with them seems to becoming, you know, the fair skin that is characteristic of Northern Europeans today. Also, they're introducing brown eyes, probably also the height. And they're also introducing, you can say, a whole new family structure, like where the nuclear family becomes the really the important, you can say, unit in a society. They also introduce, most likely, the Indo-European language.
Today, over half the world speaks some kind of Indo-European language. It's almost as if these nomads were inventing the modern world.
I mean, there's no doubt that their influence in Europe has been enormous.
So there seems to have been a massive expansion of people from this steppe belt. One of the big questions that, of course, we're having now is, how could that happen? Like, what made those people so mobile? First of all, how did they move so fast? Because within a few hundred years, we see them expanding all the way to the Altai and to Central Europe. So that's a massive expansion. We're talking about 5,000 kilometers here. This is really, really big.
These explosive migrations were fueled by horsepower. Yet how is it possible that no one stopped the Yamnaya?
Still, there is a very important question. When they moved fast to another region, people were probably already present in this region, like in Central Europe. There were people here. This was densely populated in the late Neolithic. There were people here, agriculturalists, early farmers. How could they be then replaced by those people? There's little evidence that it was a time of massive warfare. So I don't think it is related to violence. I think we have to look for other reasons why this happened.
Why are people moving, coming in and replacing each other? And then there was one of the archaeologists said, on the team said, well, what about diseases, right? So we thought, well, let's look for pestis.
Yersinia pestis. The plague. A disease we call the Black Death.
This is creating this very lethal pathogen. I mean, you have 100% mortality if you are not treated within 48 hours.
Eske was already studying the DNA in a huge number of human remains from this time. Scanning for plague was just another step.
We start screening for possible plague, and you know, bang, it just jumped out, right? I mean, so we saw fragments of it, and then we said, wow, I mean, could this really be true?
Eske noticed something strange about some of the burials. At a time when the dead were buried alone, these were buried in groups.
What was special about this site was that there was multiple individuals in the burial, where normally for these groups it's only 1 or 2 individuals. It's an unusual grave because something unusual happened to these people.
We call it the Kitmanova grave, and it tells a tragic tale. "4,000 years ago, high in Siberia's Altai Mountains, a father lost his wife and 2 young girls. He buried them side by side. It was Eske who found plague in their bones."
But what was crazy here was that this is basically evidence of pestis and plague epidemics 3,000 years before any written record. So it was an amazing result and very surprising.
What Eske had discovered was evidence of the world's first pandemic of plague. Every epidemic leaves behind immunity in the survivors. And those who lived now became the Grim Reaper on horseback. Carrying their deadly disease, the Yamnaya galloped out beyond the steppes.
The plague epidemics we see at that time is very likely one of the major drivers of the Yamnaya expansion into both Europe and Central Asia. So I guess if you want to simplify it, you could say, well, the plague was responsible for us becoming who we are to a large extent in Northern Europe.
This partnership, nomads, horses, and disease, completely changed the Eurasian continent. Yet today, the power of a horseback culture is hard to fathom, except in its original home, the Altai Mountains, where little Janibek will soon face one of the great challenges of a horse herder's life. Six months have passed since the last days of summer. This year, for the first time, Janibek is joining the men on the midwinter migration. And in the mountain passes they must cross, it's bitterly cold. I'm on my way back to join my friends on the migration, but I've heard the passes are snowed over. I'm a little worried.
Welcome, salam. Janibek. Kayta gez kunga qo'yin istamin.
In the coldest months, Awaz and Chimis bring their family down to the main valley, their winter base. Here, they feed their horses hay cut the summer before. It's crowded in the winter house, but warm.
Халдың қарыңдығы енді кей жер болғанда 2 метрге дейін түседі, кей жер метр, кей жер жұқа 50 сантиметр деп сөйтіп қар жауып. Қалды енді машина дегендікі баяғы қабақтан, жырадан жүрмейді деген сөз басқа. Атпен түйе болмаса машина жүре алмайды. Biz mine жердеміз.
So this is us. This is here. Okay.
Қалпына көбелігіп нараға келеміз күтесіз.
And that's where we're going. That's the spring camp. Okay. So 3 days. 3 days.
Күн жүріп, 3 күн қонып, 4 жоғанақта барамыз.
So Jambek, are you scared or are you excited? You're excited. Good.
Chemis and her girls pack the winter house. They'll travel to the spring camp by the low valleys, the long way around, in an old Soviet army truck. But that route's too far for the livestock. We have to cross the mountains.
Let's see. Oh, jeez. And it's on backwards, of course. Yeah, of course I didn't get the throttle right either. Okay. How does this attach? Okay. Like that. Is that okay?
Okay.
Good. All right. I think I'm ready for a winter migration.
We're off. With 300 goats, 200 sheep, 60 cows, 40 horses, and 1 camel. The valley makes for easy travel, but that will change when we reach the mountains. The Altai Mountains don't usually get much snow, but Awaz tells me this year is a zut, a once-in-a-lifetime winter of extreme cold that buries the mountain passes in snow. A zut can wipe out a family's herd. But Awaz can't wait for warmer weather. Most of his animals are pregnant, and soon they'll begin to give birth. He has to move now. These incredible horses are in their element. With a thick winter coat and a stocky build, they can break a trail through the deepest snow. But even for them, these conditions are exhausting. Awaz is often out of the saddle. We'll ride nearly 100 kilometers, sleeping in rough camps and feeding the animals only the hay our camel can carry. I'm out of my depth up here, but my sturdy, stubborn little Mongolian horse knows what to do. By the third day, I'm sore and tired. Riding through deep snow over rough ground is pushing me to my limit. What I don't realize is this journey is about to get harder. Much harder.
Awaz has just told me there's a storm coming over the mountain. You can see the clouds, you can feel the cold wind coming down through the pass. So I put all my warmest clothing on,
Apparently we're not turning back.
Even in a mild year, many herders turn back here. The wind is vicious, but we keep moving. If Janabek isn't worried, neither am I. As we descend the far side, the wind dies. I'm amazed. We haven't lost a single animal.
I'm gonna wait for my feet to warm up, and then I'll be able to fall asleep. That was a big day. I'm really tired. But we've come up into the high country. It's a lot of snow up here, and the animals are working hard. I'm exhausted, so I can just imagine how much work the horses are doing.
Our final day breaks crisp and clear. We'll now start the long descent into the spring camp, where the weather will be much milder.
That's the spring camp. That valley 1 month from now will be all green grass. We finished the 4-day migration over an entire range of mountains, and I am done. I am finished. Everything hurts. I can't feel my feet. My horse is grumpy. My back hurts. But these horses carried us. These incredible, amazing animals were strong enough to push the livestock and carry us across an entire range. It's amazing what these horses will do for us, but that's the essence of the herding way of life. You have to move with the seasons. We've left the low valleys, we're coming to the high valleys. Soon the snow will melt and the grass will get green.
Малки қой. Қарап тұр қазағасы атпенен өйтекілі.
Before we domesticated horses, a journey like this would have been impossible. And so would this way of life. A tight-knit family of herders living in an extreme environment and thriving. The horses are put away for the night, a well-earned rest. Awaz and his family are together again, a timeless scene.
Біз енді 4-ші атамыздан бері осындай жерде, осы мына табиғатта, осы құйтаста мал бағып, жалғастырып келе жатыр. Енді мен өзім 4 жадасы болып жалғастырып келем, енді 5 жадасы болып Жәнібек менің ізімді басқа алдыңғы аталарының ізін жалғап мал бағады деп ойлаймын.
In 6,000 years, horses have never failed us. Just think how different our world would be without them. What a gift.